to give me an opportunity to use the experience that I've got over the period of time, maybe 40 years in the higher education sector, and also 13 years as a Vice Chancellor of 2 universities, and now almost over a year in USIM. Okay. Dalam lebih setahun saya di USIM, I've been observing, I've been looking, and I've been feeling certain things that I think is timely to share with you before I leave this place by the end of this year or early next year. So I hope there is some contribution that I can give to you so that we can think of USIM as an institution that all of us can be proud of, that I want to be part of this family of USIM. And how do we then contextualize USIM as an institution that has got its own position, not only in Malaysia, but internationally? I've just been back from Siena, attending a university that has just commemorated their 775th academic year. I'm so lucky to be given a privilege to speak to the students and the staff and the members of the community of Siena. And you can see a university that has a tradition of more than 700 years will conduct themselves quite differently from many of the universities that I know around the world, especially including Malaysia. Yeah? Kalau kita lihat the ceremony-nya saja, the first row in Siena punya majlis are all academics. There are no politicians, there are no businessmen, there are nobody yang tidak ada kena-mengena dengan akademik langsung. They are all in the second row. The politicians, the businessmen, the chairman of the board, they are all in the second row. The first row are all the vice chancellors, the deans, the professors. And they don't care who you come from or where you come from, you will take the second position, they will do only the first position. You know? And in their speeches, you'll get students to speak. The student will criticize the university in public. I was surprised. Yeah? It's a lady that comes in, President Persatuan University of Siena, will talk about the university and will criticize the university in public because they say the university lacks this, the university needs to do this, the university must do this, the university, all the suggestions that she gives in a very positive note. And then comes the staff. The staff will also criticize the university by saying, you have done this, but you have not done this enough. Yeah? So the first time that I attended a university that has got that age-old ceremony, that gives me another vision to think about of what the university ought to be, and this is one of the other things that I want to share with you. The reason why I picked this topic is, like I say, I want now basically to be frank with you. I think I'm part of USIM, selepas 1 tahun di USIM. One way or the other, I want to contribute to the movement of USIM forward. So let me just try and give you a kind of pictorial discourse. We've got less than 1 hour now, and I've got so much to say. I'll just give you in pictures so that you can imagine, so that you can visualize, so that you can take this and mull it over your mind rather than putting words in your mouth or in your mind, so that you can now begin to recreate, repaint a picture of what USIM ought to be by the year 2025 or even beyond. The first thing I think when I come to USIM, because of the word Islamic in USIM, gives me a certain vision, a certain feeling, a certain vista of what Islamic University would look like. Okay? And it was just about 2 months ago, or just a month ago, when I was interviewed by a group of researchers and asked me, how do you think USIM differs from USM? And it was the first time I sat down to think about it. I think USIM and USM do not differ very much. And therefore the question that I asked, where is the Islamic substance in USIM as compared to USM, which is I consider a non-Islamic university. Yeah? USM is a non-Islamic version, USIM the Islamic version of Science University. Where is the Islamic element as far as USIM is concerned in the context of comparing to USM? It is comparable. Dr. Mahazan has spoken to me and say in an email, macam mana University Sains Malaysia dengan USIM ini berbeza? And I tell him there are a lot of things that you can make a difference. I will conclude it by showing you how USM and USIM can be different. Iconic means is something that it could be vision from the external. You can look at the building of USIM and say, oh, this building exists here, it does not exist elsewhere, and therefore it's iconic in that nature. It can exist in the form of personality. There are certain personalities maybe in USIM that when you talk about that personality, it conjectures immediately what USIM is all about. It could be any other non-human thing. It could be an animal, it could be a tree, it could be your own landscape, it could be your location. When you talk about USIM, people say, oh, this is a university that's very close to KLIA. You know, that's a kind of association that you want to have. It can also be a kind of a name, a signboard. As you pass through the highway, you always see this University Science Islam Malaysia, just like the Hollywood billboard. Yeah? It becomes associated with you one way or the other. Yeah? It could be your logo. And to see this is a logo of Lego that changes over time. It depicts the kind of aspiration what Lego wants to be over a period of time. So your logo reflects that kind of a vision, that kind of a change that moves forward. But what it ultimately says is basically you do not associate it with a name. It's just a symbol. When people look at the symbol, people know this is USIM. It could be even not a symbol, it could just be a personality. It could just be another vision of yours. The moment you speak about that vision, people can say, oh, this guy comes from USIM. Because the kind of words, the kind of language, the kind of terminology, the kind of phrasing that you use will reflect you come from a particular institution or a particular location. I think USIM has got that iconic label, but the issue is where do you place this and what is that iconic label? Look at this picture, it's all the same, they are zebras, but you know this, that one in the center is a unique one because it's different from the rest. Kita ada lebih daripada 20 IPTA. When I was the Vice Chancellor of USM, there's only 4 IPTAs, or 5 IPTAs at the most. And it's not difficult to differentiate USM among 5. But now you have 20 IPTAs, you've got 40 others from IPTS. You cannot position USM easily among 60 other universities around the country. And talk about 3,000 universities around the region. Talk about 30,000 universities around the world. Where do you position USM in that many universities around the world? So how do you do this? And this is the issue that I want to talk to you about. What is unique about USIM is basically this word Iqra. As you move in, you will see this label Iqra. But my 1 year here, that label remains a label. There is no culture built around it. Tidak ada budaya is built around this word Iqra. And therefore, my suggestion to you is to build this culture of Iqra. Semangat Iqra, budaya Iqra, cara bekerja Iqra, cara pemikiran Iqra. You need to build around this particular word, which is an awesome word that comes from the Quran. No other universities in Malaysia has got this word right in front of their campus. You go to UIA, you will see now a Chris terpacak around the roundabout for whatever reason, I do not know. And I was told the new chairman of the board insists a Chris. Dulu it was a kind of a structure that do not have a Chris. Yeah? But you have a very simple logo, Iqra, but I think you have not embellished it. You have not turned it into a culture. You have not turned it into a kind of a spirit that connects people. You have not turned it into a kind of a motivation, yeah? Or rather an inspiration in this particular context. How can you use this word Iqra and turn it into an inspiration? I want to make a difference between what an inspiration and a motivation is. Yeah? A motivation is when you are asked to do something, be it a minister, be it the Prime Minister, be it the Vice Chancellor, be it your Dean, be it your friend, be it somebody else. The motivation always comes from outside. And sometimes you do things because it comes from outside because you have to do it. Ada KPA, ada KPI lah, ada soaring upwards lah, all these things, you are bound by it. Yeah? But inspiration is something that you want to do. It doesn't matter what the Vice Chancellor thinks, it doesn't matter what the LPU thinks, it doesn't matter what the Prime Minister thinks, but because I want to do it and therefore it is an inspiration to me. And an inspiration will take you away from many things that you think it is not important. We don't care about makan, we don't care about tidur, we don't care about whatever occupies us or distracts us, because we want to do things. Like Iqra, to me has to be that inspiration, that drives USIM above all, not because people ask you to do, but because you in USIM wants to do it and you are fired by this imagination of what Iqra is all about. And it has therefore to be independent. Itu bukan disuruh, and therefore the idea is your idea, is unique idea, it doesn't come from outside. It comes from within, it comes from you. It is an idea that is independent. I always cherish independency in the university because you are supposed to be the pioneers that track new grounds. If you don't do this at the university, I don't know where else you're going to do it. Yeah? You've seen around the country, ideas are always taken from somewhere else. Be it the ranking, be it the meaning of university itself, be it the culture of the university. We always borrow things from outside. It's not enough coming from inside. The word human capital, for example, they've been fighting against for a long time. It all comes from outside. When it comes from outside, then it changes us within. Sometimes we lose our own value. Sometimes we lose our own culture because we want to accommodate something that is outside. Okay? The biologists know this. You don't take species from outside and plant into Malaysia because it will change the ecology of Malaysia. And the biologists say you do not take species from outside until you know that species do not transform your own environment and change into a very disastrous environment. But in terms of thoughts, in terms of words, in terms of culture, sometimes we import this very easily into our environment and it changes the environment very, very quickly. And therefore, it has something to do with image making. When I talk about Iqra, it has something to do with making, because I remember when Professor Ishak Oloyade was here at the very same podium, bila dia tanya the audience, when you see Iqra in the Quran, what does it mean? And I learned from him that when they say Iqra in the Quran, it doesn't say Iqra just the Quran, it doesn't say Iqra just the Hadith or the Sunnah, it doesn't say Iqra on one kitab, it says Iqra on many things. In other words, you read whatever you need to read as a Muslim based on what I think the three things that I've listed to you, that it gives you an inspiration, that it gives you an independent thinking, that it creates an image of what a Muslim is like. These are the three things that I think that governs what Iqra is all about as far as I'm concerned. So in other words, although you are a Quranic and a Sunnah person, there's nothing to stop you to read about biotechnology. Even though you are a chemist, there's nothing to stop you reading about Maqasid Ash-Shariah, something that I've learned from this university within a year here. We need to cross boundaries, we need to open up our mind so that the Muslims become a scholar of multiple dimensions, as what Muslim scholars used to be. Al-Kindi, my favorite example, used to master 14 disciplines. Not one part of a discipline, not a chromosome, and becomes a PhD and being called a professor. Al-Kindi knows from astronomy, right down to music, right down to mathematics, right down to philosophy, right down to astronomy and so on and so forth. How can this group of people master so much of a discipline within that period of time? Why can't we do that now? With the technology we've got, with the Google we've got, with all the facilities around us, why do we confine ourselves on a part of a discipline and call ourselves an expert? You know, sometimes I'm very embarrassed when they say he's an expert in certain things. Academy of Science, baru ni keluar, what is your expertise? And I see a lot of people, my expertise is on this, my expertise is on that. But that expertise is only typically 1 over 100 of something that you know. But look at the scholars before us. Yeah? Al-Kindi, with 14 major disciplines, wrote 200 books in his period of time. No technology. But here's a person who masters 14 disciplines and wrote 200 books. Ask ourselves, we have mastered part of discipline, how many books have we written? We have not written much. Okay? And therefore there is this gap between what a scholar is as far as Islamic world and a Muslim is concerned, and what a scholar is as far as the new and the Western world is concerned. It's a big difference. And we in USIM must bring back what a Muslim scholar means to us and what knowledge actually means to us. Okay? So I would want to, if possible, to build around this whole idea of what Iqra is all about, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, and make it into a kind of a budaya, a kind of a culture of Iqra, that everybody in this place reads books. If you're an academician, you must read books at least once a month. If you're an administrator, perhaps you read one book in 3 months. If you're students, maybe undergraduate, 1 book in a year. Postgraduate, 1 book in 6 months. Form a book club where you exchange ideas, where you debate ideas of the latest finding as far as books is concerned. That is the budaya of Iqra that I think you need to embellish. You need to establish so that USIM will be different from all other universities that I know, at least in Malaysia. Okay? When you have this iconic thing, you have got this reading sort of culture, then you begin to envisage what is ahead of you and what is the scenario is all about. Yeah? And scenario planning, the one that I benefited from USM, is quite different from strategic planning. Strategic planning is where you look back and say, this is what I've done well 20 years ago, and I want to project this forward. In scenario planning, you assume you know nothing, and then you want to project yourself forward by looking where you are and how you're going to be there. Yeah? There are many ways of doing it, but we'll not go into this. But there's a possibility of doing it. Yeah? And this is one scenario that I see when we read about Sultan Fatih ataupun Muhammad II of Istanbul at that particular time. Yeah? And when I was in Turkey a month ago, I visited this place. This is a very, very iconic experience as far as a Muslim is concerned. It's a question where Turkey or Istanbul at that particular time was sieged, dikepung oleh enemies. And there's no way of breaking out because the sea, the mouth of the river was sealed by boats. Yeah? And you cannot get into the lake or the gulf where you are supposed to fight the enemies. And what does the Sultan do? The Sultan say, take 70 of your ships and cross it over into the land. So malam itu 70 kapal daripada seberang sungai dibawa melalui darat across to the other side. That picture is too small for you to see, but you can see it there. Yeah, if I have this pointer here. Does it work as a pointer? No, it's a recorder. You can see that path there where they take 70 ships that night to cross into the other side by passing the enemies. Early in the morning, when they woke up, they found there were already 70 ships being, taken across to the other side of the river. And from that on, they will conquer the Byzantine Empire, and that's where the fall of Constantinople. You cannot imagine, and I cannot imagine, taking 70 ships across land within one night just to win a war. That's the kind of scenario thinking. That's the kind of scenario plan that I think it is important for you to look at. There are 2 different passages. From that part of the river, they bawa across here, and they landed there, and the enemy was somewhere there. Yeah? Read about this man, Sultan Fatih. Yeah? Muhammad II, he was then just 21 years old. He's not even 40. He's just 21 years old at that particular time. And he has made that historical thing. Orang kaitkan ini dengan hadis Rasulullah SAW 800 tahun sebelum itu, when the Rasul say akan ada seorang pemimpin yang akan menawan Constantinople. And people say it is Sultan Fatih, Muhammad II, who does that by thinking quite differently Yeah? Rather than saying kita dah dikepung and let's just surrender, he says no, move your 70 ships across and then won the war. Yeah? And if you think in terms of scenario plan, there are many things that you can think of that you have not thought before. Yeah? Be it in context of biology, yeah? Be it the context of environment, be it the context of technology, be it the context of the whole universe. It opens another vista, it opens another window, it opens another thinking process of where USIM ought to be as an iconic university within the context of a new scenario. You create that scenario. That scenario is not given to you, but you create. People like Drucker say, the best way to manage the future is to create one. You create that future so that your icon will stay within that particular environment. And the world needs a new icon. The world needs a new environment because these are all the collapsing that we've seen. Be it from the economy, be it from the ecology, be it from the socio-geographical side, and be it from the environmental side. They are all in a dire state. Scientists have called it what called a tipping point. If you don't work on this, we will all be sink into a kind of a catastrophe where the Muslims will be hit the most. Yeah? Pasal dalam banyak-banyak ini, the worst is all the case of a Muslim country. It's not a European country, it's not a developed country, it's a developing and majority to Muslim. So you need to work on this because it's part of our fardu kifayah. And the only way to work on this is to start thinking with the notion of speed. You need to act fast. To act fast is to think fast. You cannot act without thinking. Yeah? Sometimes there's no action means there's no thinking. So the speed is important. How do you manage all this in a period of time which is less than 50 years? You are given just another 50 years now. If you don't manage this well, the whole world will go into collapse. Right? How do they start to think and act and share this conversation? I use the word conversation rather than communication because you need to converse. You need to know what other people think. You need to know how you can bring this together so that at the end of the day you preserve a kind of a sensitivity in terms of culture and values. And therefore you really need to share what is that going on from the bottom of the community right down to the top of the community. How do you share this? How do you get the speed going? How do you get the sharing going? And how do you get the sensitivity still intact so that we don't lose our culture, so that we don't lose our value in the context of the scenarios that you want to create or to implement the scenarios that you want to do. Yeah? And for that you need leadership. And leadership to me is not a one-man show. It's not the vice chancellors and everybody else say, oh, he's a leader and let them do it, and let's all of us, take an easy way out. Leadership is what the hadith says, everybody is a leader and you are be accountable for your own leadership. In other words, all of us here in a context is a leader and you know what leadership is all about. There are many things. Yeah? But two things I would want to highlight from my point of view is one is honesty at all levels, yeah? And the other one is humility. These are the two issues that I will highlight in terms of my understanding of what leadership. Leadership must be humble. By being humble, you'll be able to learn from other people. And there is one example that I want to quote when I was in USM. In USM, my policy is, if the Vice Chancellor is in the office, the door of the office is open. If the Vice Chancellor is not in the office, the door of the Vice Chancellor's office will be closed. It's quite different from many other universities. When the Vice Chancellor is in, the door is closed. When the Vice Chancellor is out, the door is open. Yeah? Now, one of the days, there's one person that came to my office and say, Tan Sri, saya dah bekerja dengan sini 30 tahun, saya tak pernah masuk ke bilik Chancellor pun. Saya kata, silakan. Saya, dia kata, adalah Samad. Saya bekerja sebagai penyapu jalan dekat pusat Islam. Saya silakan duduk, Cik Samad. Apa yang saya boleh buat? Saya ada satu je Tan Sri, dia kata. Saya ni dibagi oleh orang menyapu jalan ni penyapu lidi. Saya sebenarnya nak penyapu bulu. So saya tanya ni, siapa bagi penyapu lidi? Dia kata Jabatan Pembangunan lah. So I call up Jabatan Pembangunan, I say, ini ada Cik Samad dengan saya, boleh tak bagi dia penyapu bulu? I said, as far as sweeping the road is concerned, Samad is an expert. None of us has swept roads before, including the Vice Chancellor. And therefore, who are you to tell Samad what to use and what not to use? So dia kata, saya nak penyapu bulu. Di belakang tempat saya duduk, there is one plane, plastic plane given by a Russian embassy, the Sukhoi, yang dah pecah. Kapal terbang, kepaknya dah pecah, everything else is already dismantled. But it's seated behind my desk. But tomorrow morning when I come into the office, the first thing I saw is the Sukhoi has been manned. Yang pecah-pecah semua dah elok. And I asked my PA, siapa betulkan Sukhoi ni? Dia kata, Samad datang pagi tadi pukul 7 dengan gam dia dan memperbaiki kapal terbang Tan Sri. The kapal terbang there had been sitting at least for 6 months in my office. Timbalan nak Chancellor masuk, pendaftar masuk, bendahari masuk, all the big people masuk, but nobody even cares about the Sukhoi. Samad masuk in 5 minutes, come back the next day and repair the Sukhoi. It touches my heart. You know, what this says to me is basically this man that comes in is concerned about small things within the university, not the big things. We are all concerned about the big thing, but he is a man that concerns about small things in the university, including sweeping the roads. And I call him up. I said, Samad, terima kasih kerana memperbaiki kapal terbang saya. Tak payah terima kasih Tan Sri, saya pun dah dapat penyapu buluh saya. You know? Well, there's a kind of humility if you can exhibit around your place. At the end of the day, you touches the heart of everybody else. And that's where the learning process begins, and that's where we begin to be honest with ourselves, because we do not know as much as we think we know. You can be a professor, Tan Sri, Dato, somebody, you don't know as much as Samad knows as far as sweeping the road is concerned. And that is humble enough for me to accept. There's a lot of things that I need to learn, even though I'm leading a university. Okay? But more than just this, I think the leader must also be able to set directions. Where is the compass of the university? Where is the compass of higher education? Yeah? And that means you must, again, differentiate yourself as an iconic university. If everybody else is moving that way, should I not move this way? Yeah? And set a new direction for your institution, for yourself, for your university. Or should we move the same direction as everybody else? Eh? And this is where I think university in Malaysia is not making a dent, because all of us look alike. Yeah? All of us look alike. I always term this as a kind of a McDonald's. You go to McDonald's everywhere, they look alike, they feel alike, they smell alike. Yeah? Pergilah ke Paris ke, pergilah ke Siena ke, pergi ke mana. The moment you masuk, you know there's a McDonald's. You know what the menu is all about. You have HEPA, you have Happy, you have AA. The names are all the same. They're just like the menu. Probably it costs different because in different country, but everything else is the same. How do you then become iconic when everything else is the same? How do you then differentiate yourself when everything else is the same? Yeah? So you need to start moving in a different direction, so that at the end of the day, you will become a leader that creates another symphony of things. That you are able to coordinate certain things as a leader, looking at the different dimension, at the end of the day, passing a new idea to another person, not just repeating the same idea that another person has. My axiom is always, if 2% thinks alike, one is redundant. Yeah? 2% must think differently and try to coordinate and make, the best of the two ideas, rather than having 2 people having the same idea or 30 people having the same idea. And for this leadership, to me, is basically about unlearning certain things. The old things, that is probably no longer relevant, yeah, you need to unlearn them. So that it makes space for you to learn new things. It's not something which is new. But perhaps what is new is to co-learn. It's a new word that's coming now, co-creating, co-learning, co-developing. In other words, we need to consult people that is below us so that whatever we want to do, it becomes relevant to them, not only to the university and the country, but also to the people that is involved in this learning process. Okay? We now have got a lifelong learning. The new words are going to come up very soon. Is life-wide learning, W-I-D-E. In other words, it's not enough to know just the depth, but you also need to know the breadth. Just like the Muslim scholars of yesterday. They need to know the breadth of that dimension rather than to the depth. We are all involved in the depth now. Yeah? Knowing a minute things of certain things, but we do not know how to relate it to the breadth or to the width of whatever we need to learn. So for leadership that all of us are involved, be mindful that certain things is no longer applicable. The ideas have gone, and you need to create new ideas. Yeah? In my article in The Sun, I think last Wednesday, if you read it, I was critical over this term soaring upwards. And I had this dialogue with the minister in RSOG, because I asked him, soaring upwards where? Yeah? What is a new thing when you soar upwards? He showed a lot of tables where we are doing good. I think that's fine, but that's still not good enough because we are just following somebody else. It's just like the fish, the picture of the fish that I showed you. We are just following this group of people. We are not moving in our own direction. Yeah? When you talk about soaring upwards and just talking about ranking and the whole idea of what ranking is all about. So we need to creating a new things, and this is where the co-learning and the life-wide learning becomes important as we go along. The next thing I think that we need to think of, once you've got this icon and you know where the context is as far as scenario is concerned, you need to make the best out of it, right? And that's why I say it's aspirational, a strong desire to achieve something high and something great, living to the ideal of that icons that you want to create. Of course, your vision, your mission, your values are important, and that thing is well crafted as far as USIM is concerned. But you want to find out what are the things that you need to spend 20% on that gives you an 80% sort of effect, the Pareto's effect. I think you know this. Yeah? We don't want to spend 80% doing something but only getting 20% of the impact. What is it that we need to spend 20% on but getting 80% of the impact? Right? There's a kind of thinking that we need to start asking ourselves. What is it that we need to know, all of us, to get that 80% impact rather than the other way around? Okay? Which means to say, we need to study, if you want to do a high jump, you need to study every detail of what the jump looks like. It is, in fact, if you have time, it's a good study of how high jump changes over a period of time from scissors cut to light down to the face very flop. Mengapa cara orang melompat high jump ini bertukar from time to time? Why can't they do scissors cut all the way? Because a technique has got its own limits. You can only do scissors cut until certain height. After that height, you need to change your technique to go further. And you must understand what is the technique that you want to adopt. If you want to scale a mountain, you cannot be scaling this mountain with the same technique that you used 12 years ago when this university is established. That technique must change. You are at the base camp, you have moved out maybe here, and you want to go further. And this has new techniques. This is what the relearning and the co-learning comes in. Yeah? So that is what this 80-20 means. What is the technique that you want to adopt so that you can move forward into the new millennium? Yeah? Can you adopt this technique? I'm not too sure. Can all of us learn how to fly? It could be a way forward. Just like as much as these people jump. You know, the way they jump backwards, the way they jump this way and that way. how can we find this new technique, and what is the Islamic history that we can learn from that allows us to do this. Bear in mind that Islamic history has created another civilization through the Renaissance of the West in the 14th centuries. Kalau dia boleh mencetuskan satu lagi tamadun, why can't it does two things now in the same way? What is it that these people have got that create a new civilization some years back that we have not learned and not caught on? Okay? So that when we talk about aspiration, it is a world open to us. It is not a choice limited to us, but it is a choice of abundance. That you can pick and choose what you want as you move ahead. Okay? And therefore, when you talk about aspiration, there are three things that I think the new skills that we need to acquire. Certainly, on a relationship management, you need to know how to anticipate. What will be the new things that's coming forward that you can use, that you can actually leverage on, that you can actually make your university better than other universities. This whole idea of futuristic thinking, this whole idea of scenario planning, this whole idea of anticipating. This is not a skill that we have developed in any university in Malaysia. Yeah? A few centers perhaps in might other, in foresight and stuff like that. ASM is trying to develop one, but the university do not have. And Alhamdulillah, we were told UNESCO will invest the chair of future studies in USIM, inshallah, before the end of the year. If this person comes and he becomes a professor of future studies, then I think there is one discipline that you have got above all other universities within Malaysia, in fact within this region. Yeah? You must know then how to assimilate those ideas into local context. We choose to want to take these ideas in their foreign context and then plonk it on us. It will not work. Yeah? I give you one simple example. A project that was taken from Japan, a voluntary project that was taken to Japan and was implemented in Malaysia. In Japan, it works wonderfully. But when it comes to Malaysia, it fails. And why it fails is very simple. In Japan, when it's a volunteer project, when people ask volunteer for the project, the Japanese understand the word volunteer means an option to join. So when I volunteer, then I want to join. In Malaysia, the word volunteer means option not to join. Kita kata sukarela, oh tak apalah sukarela, biar mereka buatlah, saya tak payah. And therefore, these two meanings, from what the Japanese understand and from the Malaysia understand, take it over the in Malaysia, because the meaning of the word option is volunteer is different. Okay? And therefore you need to assimilate it to the local context, understand it, and change it around so that you can also be successful within the context of Malaysia. And last but not least, it's a skill to accept. In other words, to get it implemented. Ideas has got half-lives, just like anything else. You don't implement it within a certain time, then the idea will just die. Okay? So you need to assert it, you need to move it, you need to implement it. And this is where I think this whole idea of futuristic thinking and implementation becomes an important skill for us to learn in moving forward. The other thing I think is about mastery. Mastery is about how do you arrive at the target that you desire. Right? I've talked to you about soaring upwards. Which sky, red sky or blue sky? And my option is the blue sky. You use the blue ocean strategy. Blue sky means don't benchmark anybody else. And this is what the author says. The moment you benchmark, you will be second best. You can never be the best because you will always follow the benchmark created by somebody else. Right? In that article on Sunday, I talked about the creation of MIT 150 years ago. The Vice Chancellor said then, I want to create a new, different, and bold university to deal with the industrial age. Yeah? Then Harvard was there. Yale was there. Oxford was there. Cambridge was there. Tapi dia kata, I want to build a different, bold, and new university because I want to deal with the industrial age. Because when Harvard was created, Yale was created, Oxford was created, industrial age wasn't there. At least not as rigorous as it was when MIT was created. Okay. And in fact, MIT was asked to join Harvard 6 times. The MIT board kata, no way we're going to be on our own. Imagine kita was asked to join Harvard, I think we'll do it the first day. Yeah? But MIT has got a different thinking, and therefore MIT now stands as it is, in competition with Harvard, in competition with Stanford. They don't need to follow the model that was created. And that's what the blue sky is all about, or the blue ocean is all about. How do USIM, not following anybody, but create its own vista, not benchmarking anybody, but create the benchmark on its own. So now when people talk about benchmarking, I want to benchmark USIM, rather than USIM wants to benchmark somebody else. How does that happen? Yeah? And that happens only by the way of back to how we think the future is all about. Yeah? And in that article I talk about the future now is about the age of sustainability. How do you rework this concept of sustainability into a kind of university, a kind of institution like MIT was 150 years ago? We'll come back to that idea, inshallah, soon. Yeah? How do you balance things up? And more importantly, how do you work things together? And alhamdulillah, this is what we've been trying to do in FKP. Trying to bring the same discipline together under one roof and let them work together. Yeah? So in this project that is created and led by Dr. Mahazan on leadership with Kalbu, we have got people from different disciplines working together and making it happen. It must cross the schools, it must cross the faculty, it must be a university-wide sort of transdisciplinary attempt to get this mastery across. And that mastery, therefore, talks about how do we make this balance that we talk about. Okay? You must know how to multitask. It means also you must be able to think at different levels. Einstein said you create a problem at one level of thinking, you need to solve it at a different level of thinking. So there's these layers of thinking that we talk about. I talk about Maqasid al-Sharia, is something that I've learned very much within this university, right? That the concept of Maqasid al-Sharia, I think, is a well-balanced concept that involves a lot of thinking process at a different level on the 5 elements of Maqasid. I think you know better than I do. But that levels must be balanced, and we must appreciate what is sacred within the Islamic community that do not change. Yeah? And I like to contrast this from what is happening now. Now it's about groupthink. When somebody says soaring forward, soaring upward, we will say soaring upward. We don't even ask, so where, sir? Yeah? We don't even ask, do we need to soar at all? The kind of thinking that is already ingrained in what I call the groupthink. Because we don't want to be singled out. We don't want to be that zebra which is multicolored, because we will then be vulnerable. But to be iconic is to be vulnerable. You cannot be iconic and not vulnerable. But that vulnerability will allow you to create new narratives. The maqasid yang lama, yang people understand as an individual base, can now be opened up to a community base, can now be opened up to a global base. Now the concept of maqasid, from the way I see it, after discussing from my colleague, Dr. Yusuf and Dr. Rumai particularly, has a global implication. It's not just an Islamic individualistic implication. It has a universal global implication that if we can rewrite that narrative, moving from what it was traditionally to what it should be now in a global context. Yeah? And this whole idea that everything must change is something that we need to challenge. All the time, people cakap, innovate, innovate, innovate. Yeah? But there are certain things that you cannot innovate because this is sacred to us. That would be the point of reference. The university point of reference is what? To find truth, to talk about honesty, and to create new generations of thinking people. That's what university is all about. It's not about employment. It's not about employability. It's not about ranking. It's not about KPIs. It's not about all the things that we have talked about. And therefore, that sacred ethos of the university must be maintained if the university wants to survive as a university. Otherwise, all of us will be a company by tomorrow. Dalam the jargon kita pakai all a very corporate jargon. We embellish corporate tradition, not academic tradition like the Siena University. Yeah? You go to Siena University, you know the culture is an academic culture, not a corporate culture at all. And where do we start to preserve this sacredness of what the university is all about, the real ethos or the foundation of the university? And therefore we need to balance this all the time. I'm not saying it's all no good, but there are certain times that we think this need to be, put aside and go into what the university is all about. Sorry, I've finished my time. Let me finish this. Yeah? And you need to be internally vibrant. I go back to this whole idea of what inspiration is all about. Yeah? And that vibrancy is coming back to the kalpu, something again that I learned from Muslim. Unless you start to train your heart as another seat of intellect, not just the mind, you'll probably not be able to express what Islam is all about. Yeah? And that now begin to link with what the soul is all about. Yeah? The roh, the nafs, or whatever it is. And once you get that done, then basically you have got what they call a very powerful weapon that's able to move things because the soul is fired. Yeah? The soul is ignited. There's flame in yourself that you want to move what you think is important for you, not just what people think it is important for you, but for yourself. Yeah? And therefore you are able to start a different way of thinking, a different kind of vision, and a different way of work culture around the ikrab that I mentioned to you earlier. And very quickly, what does that entail? That entails we need to then be sensitive to ourselves. Yeah? Steve Jobs has said this very well. He's a non-Muslim, but he said this very well. Don't let your inner voice be drowned by the voice from the outside. And therefore, we need to develop the sensitivity of what the cult tells to you and what intuitions bring to you. Because I think this is a better measure of what accuracy and correctness is all about. It's a question of interdependence between the heart and the mind and the soul. Yeah? And at the end of the day, it's about your instinctive feeling of what is right and what is wrong. This will be the moral compass that we hold dear to. Right? And I just want to quote Rumi, he said, no more words, hear only the voice within. Right? And this is what I think at the end of the day, we want to create this balanced person, balanced human being, as per the National Philosophy of Education. The National Philosophy of Education talks about creating a balanced person. There's no word human capital in the National Philosophy of Education. Look at it carefully. And where does the word human capital come from? It comes from a neoliberal ideology of creating a free market of employment and employability. That's about it. And it goes very far from what the national education philosophy is all about as far as Malaysia is concerned. And my last key point is basically courageous, and I use the symbol butterfly here. Courageous in a soft way, not courageous in an aggressive way, not courageous from the Western point of view, but very Eastern point of view, with humility, with humbleness, and with a kind of buddhi that we always cherish for our culture. You may be a cat, but you have got a vision of a tiger. You may be a cat because you're just 12 years old. You are not 775 like Siena. But certainly you can think of a university which is more than just 12 years old. And you want to think like a tiger, although you are a cat. You want to be able to run or move out of your environment that confines you. Yeah? This particular fish wants to move from that environment to this environment. And that's a big change, that's a big jump that you need to create, and that is where the transformation is all about. Transformation is not just staying here and making the changes. Transformation is moving out of that, moving out of your environment, getting into a new environment, which in your case probably an iconic. And it's not about bravery, but it's not also about fearing things to do. You often hear without fear or favor, all right? Because you know there is a mandate given to you as a Muslim. Ada fardu ainnya, ada fardu kifayahnya. That is enough to give you the courage to make the change. To tell you what is not right when it's not right, to tell you what is better when there is a better option, rather than just saying yes because you need to say yes. Okay? And this is where I think the iconic label of USIM stands. You are rooted in a principle that talks about honesty and truth. And there's no compromise to this. If university fails to talk about honesty and truth, I think the whole society will go into the decay and we will be responsible for it. We can do it in a very academic way because we don't take sides, who says what, politically or otherwise. We say it on the basis of this knowledge that is rooted in values that we have cherished within this university as part of the Iqra culture. Yeah? So you take a stand. And dalam dunia sekarang ini, Islam is being challenged all the time. You know, in a meeting that I go in Siena where there are 300 more participants from around the world, I can count for less than 10 from Muslim countries. 3 saja from USIM. Prof Roshada, and Dr. Suhaili and myself, because I have to be there. 2 from Bangladesh, and the rest are all Iranians. And how do you expect to get our vision and thinking represented in a body that talks about new knowledge moving forward? Yeah? We need to start rooting ourselves in a value that we are able to stand for ourselves in any forum, in any dimension. And what does that mean? That means you can see this everywhere in the Muslim world. I took this picture of a student, of a child in Gaza. I've been to Gaza, yeah, and I learned about it. When you talk about people in Gaza, they are better than people in Malaysia. Although they are under siege by the Israelis for years and years, yeah, but their mind is very free. And they are very consistent in their struggle. They don't care what the Israelis do, they will continue with their own struggle. Yeah? They are not cowed by the Israeli at all. When I was in Siena, there's another president of another Muslim, Palestinian university. Dia mengatakan tiap-tiap petang, the Israeli soldier will come to the university and just harass the students, and then they just go back. Every evening without fail, they will come and do that to their university. And he's launching a complaint to us and say, please do something about it. But they are fighting consistently on that. They are committed on this, and they champion the cause. What is the cause that USIM is championing? What is the cause that USM is championing? What is the cause as you as a professor profess? These are very basic questions. We are all professors. But what do we profess? Is an issue that all of us must ask. The title professor is a big title. You cannot be a professor and not profess anything. Then you are a non-professor. What is it that you profess? What is the cause that you profess? What is it that you're committed to? What is it that you are consistently noted for as far as yourself and the institution that you stand for? Yeah? And therefore, if you look at it, it is basically a kind of an Islamic label that we've got. I just fashioned it such a way, iconic scenario, leadership, aspiration. And you have mastery, internally alive or internally vibrant and courageous. You sum it up, it is Islamic. Yeah? Iconic scenario, leadership, aspiration, mastery, internally vibrant, and also this courageousness. And that is the element that I think that you work on it, it will make you different from a different university. And that Islamic label is what USIM must show all the other IPTAs, including UIA, that you are different. You cannot be comparing yourself to any other universities because you have this label when other universities do not have this label. And therefore, you must take this label onwards, and you must make it into a kind of a global dimension, as Islam has warranted you to do this. So when you talk about USM and USIM, this is my vision of USIM. By the year 2016, next year, I hope we will hit on the regional reference point. Yeah? And there's also a plan for it in my head. What is it that is going to be like? And not by the year 2025, I think it's too long. But 4 years from now, you should be able to hit your international reference point. Just by using that formula that USIM is Islamic, by creating this culture around Iqra, I think you will revolutionize the whole university, not just transform. You will revolutionize the whole university by creating this new culture of Iqra and make it a kind of a living, tradition within your own university. There you are, the 7 things that I think you need to work on if USIM must, and sure enough, will lead, and how we can talk about it at different times perhaps. My conversation with Dr. Mahazan in an email, dia kata macam mana USM boleh jadi USIM, boleh jadi USM. When I was USM, these are the things that we looked at. Kami memimpin is our logo, our slogan, yeah? And therefore we always think of how do we lead. And my question would be, orang dah buat tidak? Orang dah buat, never mind, jangan buat, kita buat orang yang belum buat. It's not the question, orang dah buat dah tidak, let's do it. You say, if somebody has done it, forget it, let's do something else. That's what we talk about time and day. We create this concept of campus sejahtera. Campus sejahtera is a concept, we return back the campus to you, you developed it. It's not my work to do it as a Vice Chancellor. It is our campus. All right? And there are elements in the word sejahtera that we can talk about. We created the concept university in the garden, because the garden gives you what university will be like. It creates variety. One, a garden has varieties. It is well rooted. We talked about the root just now, on values, on culture, on honesty, on truth, on tradition. That's what. You normally just see the garden from above. You forget about the roots. The roots is what makes the flower or the trees. Yeah? So when we talk about university in the garden, we always talk about the values of that university. Super juga dengan UIA, yeah? The garden of knowledge and whatever. We talk about sustainable development, that is our future focus. When we talk about APEC, it will take sustainable development as the future focus. Yeah? And they have got a culture of R&D, because we are a research-intensive university and so on and so forth. How do I take this to USIM? The same thing. In fact, you have value add to it. Yeah? Kalau kita kata kami memimpin, you can talk about kami memimpin dengan kalbu. Your research has been already starting. You will move one up above USM, because USM has not talked about the kalbu. Perhaps do not know how to talk about the kalbu. They are not Islamic in that nature. Sejahtera, the word barakah is better than sejahtera. You can create a campus of barakah. Yeah? University in the garden, you can talk about university in the Quranic garden. UNESCO has got a program called the Quranic garden. UNESCO recognizes dalam Quran, the word garden was well defined and well established. And there's a project in UNESCO called the Quranic garden. You can create the same university in a Quranic garden with another value add on what a garden is about from the spiritual point of view. Okay? I've talked about sustainable development. The concept of Maqasid Asyariah far exceeds the concept of sustainable development if you re-narrate it, if you take it a global to a universal level. You'll create a better concept. In fact, you can even supersede that concept, but we need to work on it. Yeah? And you talk about culture of R&D, you have a culture of Ikram, which is more basic than what R&D. Unless you start reading, unless you start articulating, unless you start writing, there's no R&D. Okay? R&D will be the R&D yang kita ikut orang buat lah. Stanford buat ni, and therefore we want to. They do nanotechnology, we want to do nanotechnology. They do MOOCs, we want to do MOOCs. Yeah? But why we want to do MOOCs, we are never clear. Why do you want to do nanotechnology? We are never clear in this particular context. So, if you want to talk about where USM is and how USIM can, not to say redefine itself, but have one value added over USM and supersede USM as far as Apex University is concerned, if they are an Apex University, I think there's a chance to do it. But the issue is we need to work on it. Sorry I've exceeded my time, but I just want to thank you for this very simple talk. We can deepen it if you want, but there's a lot of elements that I think no reason why USIM cannot lead, no reason why USIM have to be the same as others. I think USIM can move forward into a better and a more successful university. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
USIM, kita tahu dia ada falsafah yang baik, nakli-nakli, tapi itu pun biasanya kita baru berperhatian towards the end. Jadi saya nampak aspek ini memang sangat baik. Okay, tadi macam dilihat bila kita mapkan yang USM dan USIM. Jadi aspek-aspek bila tadi disebut macam makanan syariah, seperti sustainable development yang nampak plain dan basically yang every other university try to move. Jadi saya rasa satu plan yang baik. Jadi InsyaAllah perkara ini memang kita akan teliti, okay, dan kita akan masukkan dalam kita punya plan strategik USIM yang kita akan print as a blueprint untuk USIM. Dan saya suka sebenarnya idea bila disebut tadi itu, okay, kucing yang dikata I'm a lion, dan orang boleh percaya, okay, sebab aspirasi sangat tinggi. Jadi mungkin saya nak tanya pada Kanta Sri, sebab macam di Malaysia ni kita ada banyak universiti Islam. Saya boleh nampak macam universiti Islam di Malaysia dan universiti Islam macam di Afrika sebagai contoh. Tapi macam di USIM ni, kita selalu sahaja dibayangi dengan contoh macam UIA. Jadi daripada segi sebab bawah ni pun ada saya dibisikan oleh Naib Chancellor UIA yang maknanya bercadanglah untuk ada kolaborasi dari USIM dengan UIA. Jadi saya rasa cukup mudah juga. Tapi in a way, USIM sepatutnya kena berbeza. Okay, slightly need to be, slightly different between UIA and USIM. And all this while, saya nampak perbezaan itu mungkin kerana satu mungkin kita kata satu universiti awam, satu ni bukan, satu ni masuk ke pasar ini, terbasar mata apa ni. Dia more kepada macam aspek logistik untuk masukkan dan sebagainya. Jadi bagi kepada Bagan Tan Sri yang telah 13 tahun menjadi Naib Chancellor, okay, di universiti awam, universiti Apex dan juga di universiti swasta. Dan juga tadi telah mendapat celupan USIM selama setahun. Jadi pada Bagan Tan Sri, kita bersegi strateginya, apakah strategi yang USIM perlu ada untuk
no way but you need to collaborate. Because we've got 18 more to say you are not right. I say this when I started Al-Bukhari University. Al-Bukhari University, we can talk about it walaupun kita jadi, tapi konsepnya cukup berbeza dengan semua universiti. Yeah. The pressure that I got from other vice chancellors, hey, why are you doing this? Why are you so different from us? Everybody is trying to dampen down that model of the university, which is different from them, and that's normal. Yeah. If you are different from me, I need to make sure that you are not my competitor, and if I will try to push you down. It's a very Western way of thinking. Yeah? The concept of leadership in the Western world comes from this. The root word is to vanquish the enemy. That's the root word. If I'm a leader, my role is to make sure that all others will be below. Whereas concept dalam Islam, ataupun dalam Melayu, kita tahu apa pemimpin, we talk about holding hands. Tak boleh pegang tangan, different story lah. But you talk about holding hands, moving, walking along together. And this is what you need to do with UIA. because you are both Islamic university. Kenapa? Kerana you need to start developing the concepts. What is an Islamic university is all about? That is different from a national university, that is different from a private university. What makes you different? And you need to talk in the same language. You cannot be talking different language to UIA, then you're already in a vulnerable state. So that concept must be there. But what you can differentiate yourself with UIA is other things. Misalnya, I can think of, since I've been working with FKP, your Dawa project is tremendously different from what the UIA Dawa project is all about. You can differentiate yourself from that point. So, sama dari segi basicnya, differentiation dari segi detailnya. But you need to decide what is it. I know you are doing a lot of work on halal as a project. I don't know whether UIA has got that. You have got a leadership chair. I don't think UIA has got that. Yeah? There are many things that you have got that UIA do not have that you need now to work and differentiate on it. Dia punya slogan is a garden of knowledge and virtue. But they have not got this Quranic garden concept that UNESCO is trying to develop. You can create that. So, my answer to Dato VC punya, you need to collaborate on a very basic level so that you can have one clear understanding of what an Islamic university is all about that differs from other universities. But you need to begin to differentiate where you are better than UIA. And I think one of the things yang saya rasakan, it is so important for USIM to be successful because you take all the religious students into the university. Kemana lagi dia nak pergi? Kalau universiti ini tidak berfungsi baik ataupun gagal, you are actually sacrificing a whole group of Islamic future scholars. No two ways. UIA, they are delivered from a secular universities. Kita semua 100% from Islamic-based schools and colleges. And that is one compelling reason that we must not fail. Because the burden that will be asked later on will be tremendous. Yeah. And this is what I think it is. And my own learning here dalam setahun saja, saya masuk sini with the understanding of maqasid ini is something is outdated. Dah jumur. Because it's very individualistic. It's talking about my harta, my keturunan, my nyawa. It's all about mine. But when I start to read books around here, and I'm compelled to read it because I meet around with scholars, and it is a concept to be open. I'll just give you one example. Bila kita cakap tentang harta saja, we're not talking about this physical harta. We're beginning to expand into an idea of resources, including water, including air, including soil, including all the things that people have talked about sustainable development. And therefore kita punya tanggungjawab bukan saja menjaga kerusi dan meja, kita punya tanggungjawab menjaga air, menjaga udara. So we come to haze. What do we do as a Muslim to protect that air that diamanahkan oleh Tuhan kepada kita? Kita akan ditanya definitely. Di Malaysia ada 365 days of sunshine. What do we do with it? Look at our buildings. We have closed all this up. We switch on the aircon. We switch on the lights. Kalau kita buka ini, we get the sunlight in. And that's what the Muslim architecture is all about. It's entirely Western architecture. And these are the things that I think we need to start thinking about. The cross ventilation dulu, you look at the mosques, the best mosques around the world, in terms of ventilation, I was told is the Umayyad Mosque of Syria. The cross ventilation is fantastic. Dia tak ada dinding. And these are the things that Maqasid Syariah will be able to revive again. We talk about nyawa. We're not talking about just my nyawa, we're talking about nyawa not only of the Muslim, we're talking about nyawa of all the species that we are talking about. Your doctors will be able to take Maqasid Syariah by using this as a kind of a principle that they need to heal everybody without race, religion, or at least the richness of this concept better than sustainable development. So benda-benda ini yang saya rasakan kekayaan yang you need to now work because you are Islamic university. USM do not have to do this because probably they don't understand even what Makasih Asyara is all about as I was there when I was in USM. Yeah? So I will not take much of your time. If there's any more discussion, maybe we can have it some other time. I know you are just constrained with time. Yeah? But this is my humble contribution to you. I hope you can think about it. If I'm still around, let's talk about it. Let's find new ways of making USIM a different university when we start the year 2016. 3 months from now, not impossible. You can restructure this when the new students comes in for when your new staff. So terima kasih banyak for this opportunity, particularly to Dato VC, and also to all of you who have made your time here.